I would argue Shantae is as a different, like, I don't know. Shantae's whistle is pretty fucking banger. If there's anybody you could put in the same category who's done things with it actually artistically, Shantae. So many times, and this is so fitting for the era that Mariah came out of. Sounds like metal guitar. It just sounds metal as fuck, man. Like when I listen to Mariah, which I think I hear tight. Like, listen to the vowel choices; they're super bright. I say that she uses a neutral vowel. Her overdubs are so good, even when it's just a random whistle in the background. This is also particularly difficult, the ability to switch. This is really particularly hard. This is so hard. And this is a recording, but we went from, we looked at the America the Beautiful recording. Check this out. Let's check out the America the Beautiful one, and we'll watch that. So this, take a real close look at her throat. That popping up is something that's really incredibly hard to do that quickly, and is why there's a little bit of a break. Now, the break musically works because it is supposed to be kind of an extreme, like, you know, very punch in the face sort of switch. There's nothing subtle or elegant about this. It's not trying to be. This is more of like a neutral phonation for singing. This is the false folds are a little contracted. This person is not like, and have them like super relaxed. There's a little bit of tension here. You can hear it. But you can hear how the contraction works. Look at how much space there is between the arytenoids, the airy epiglottic muscles, and then the false folds. There's this divot, right? Now let's look at what whistle register looks like. It's like flat. It's weird. It's like you're taking everything, you're squishing it in such a way where your folds stay stiff, so much so that the mucosal lining actually doesn't vibrate that much, if at all. There's a lot of stiffness that you need to have to create this. It has to be controlled, otherwise it sounds terrible. Let's play a game of Find the Larynx, okay? Look at how tiny these are the vocal folds. Look at how tiny these things are. Those are the vocal folds. That's what you're working with, my guys, and gals, and smaller for gals. This is a male model. It's about half the size for a female. So one of the things that needs to happen in order to get this is that you need to contract your suprahyoid muscles, which is the hyoid bone is what rests atop the larynx. So this is, but you need to kind of stiffen these muscles in order to get things to kind of work. I'm not just making this up. This is from this study. This was done in 2016. There is a more recent study, but it is not publicly accessible without paying money for it. And this is Fusi. And this was the Franco Fusi and Antonio di Corcha. So they discussed this at length, that there's a lot involved in the musculature of doing it. And there's a lot of stabilizing the vocal folds to be able to achieve that. So again, if we take a look at this. In fact, listen to the vowel on C. She goes, why would she do that? Because she's preparing the whistle by contracting the suprahyoid muscles. C. Why would you say C any other way? Why would you C? Now maybe she's trying to get the low note, and maybe she's trying to get the low note a little bit to be a little bit more pronounced. Getting up the microphone, extending the lips, which extends the vocal tract, which highlights lower frequencies, gets up close to the mic. Proximity effect is going to bump lower frequencies, but the other explanation, I believe this is more likely, is that to do that is to contract your suprahyoid muscles. Right? Woo! Singing is a game of just the right amount of tension. If you don't have any tension, you're not like standing up, right? Like your muscles are to be used. So it's about ergonomics. It's not about necessarily tension. It's about efficiency. It's a game of not even inches. You don't even get inches to work with. Now we're getting into the different tone quality. Very quiet. I'm gonna blow my ears out with the next one, alright? So what makes these different qualities? This is pretty much all vowels. There's not a lot you can do with your vocal folds to kind of create the difference in tone quality. There's not a lot you can do with your air. This is such a restrictive thing. Your vocal folds really have to be in a very precise position. So really, you can only use vowels to shape your tone quality. When someone is saying piercing or they're describing metallic, what they're talking about is frequency bias, as the simplest way to put it. Let's bring up a spectrogram. So a spectrogram is going to have, you have your time on the horizontal plane, and you have your frequencies on the vertical plane. This one is nice enough in that it kind of distinguishes frequencies also in pitch. Different frequencies have different tone qualities, right? As a male voice, I'm going to sit a lot around here, the fundamental. Well, I've got a good spot for this camera here. I have a lot of stuff around the fundamental here. You can see that there's a lot more than just the initial note, the initial pitch. And this is because we have what are called overtones. Overtones are how we build sound, at least sound quality. Audio engineers use what are called EQs here. And we control all of these things so that we can control different frequencies, right? This is an EQ guide from Isotope's website. They make Premiere plugins. Now, we're looking at electric guitar as a reference to electric guitar and the tone quality, right? Take a look at how much frequency, or how much population there is of the frequency around 5K. They even attribute that to the 2 to 5K being harsh in sound. When we want a harsher sound, we have to highlight those frequencies. There are a couple of different ways to do that. You can see here, right? When I'm doing I can change my vowel. I'm contracting a muscle called the Airy epiglottic sphincter, but she doesn't have that option. She can't contract the AS any more than it's already contracted because she's flattening the entire instrument to stabilize the vocal folds. She has to use vowels. Now, there is some wiggle room for control, but it's very tiny, it's very nuanced. The ordinary tools that are available, you have to really rely on a fundamental part of singing, which are your vowels. Ooh. Yeah, I'm feeling kind of fragile. Silky versus Airy. How does she get Airy? Remember how we took a look at the vocal folds and they're super tiny? If we go back at looking at the opening of the whistle register here, you can open the folds technically a little bit more, and by opening, more air will escape, and thus you will get an airier sound. This will create a sort of white noise kind of thing. And by shushing yourself, you get actually, ironically, more sound because it'll occupy more frequencies. Like when you add distortion to a guitar, it gets so much louder. Silky is going to be the removal of some frequencies that we consider more obnoxious and the bumping of others. If I'm talking like this is actually my normal speaking voice where I'm not really retracting my false folds. Look at how many of the upper frequencies I have. Now, my posture is bad, so this little nasality is getting drifted in. But now what happens if I get my radio voice? Oh my. You can see that all of a sudden, some of the higher frequencies are going away. And now some of the lower frequencies are more robust. Let's put it on a single note so you can see this middle note here gets brighter. That means the frequency is louder. Now I am introducing more frequencies, but the fact that this one gets louder by such a significant margin is what gives us the warmth. Using whistle register. Whistle register is so high, she doesn't have the luxury of a lot of things that we would consider to be lush frequencies. And so she has a really difficult job, and that she does really well. This is just volume control, dynamic control. That's what that is. So these adjectives and the things that we describe in these aesthetics that we have, they're physical phenomena. And they're just incredibly hard to do. Like, already just normally singing is kind of an insane thing to take. For women, the vocal folds are the size of a dime, right? To have such nuanced control under the ordinary circumstances, right? But to do it in whistle is just fucking completely bonkers. I love the sound of just her ordinary voice and her overtones. To do it with vibrato is actually insane. So how do we make vibrato? Vibrato is in part, so ordinarily the way vibrato happens is you tilt your thyroid cartilage. There's tension between what are called the cricothyroid muscles and the vocal folds. And that difference in strength and that tension creates this kind of like oscillation. These are the cricothyroid muscles, and these are the vocal folds. Now, while the vocal folds are technically larger, cricothyroids are at a pivot point. They have a fulcrum to work with, so their strength has more implications. Still, the vocal folds are about twice the size of the cricothyroid muscles, so this kind of creates a little bit of an oscillation. What's remarkable is listen to how the airiness comes in and out, not in a very noticeable way, and I'll tell you why that's significant. You can hear that if you listen super, super carefully, listen again, if you listen super carefully, you can hear the airiness come in and out. And you can hear it coming in and out with the oscillation. Let me demonstrate something, and it's not going to be anywhere near as impressive as Mariah. Shocker. But if I do something, if I have vibrato and falsetto, we're going to see something similar happen, and I'll explain the mechanics of that and why they're similar. If you look here, every time the pitch goes down, so right, this is a different spectrogram, but this principle is the same here, right? As there's a dip in the pitch, there's going to be an increase in this kind of white noise. That's the air, that's the shh leaking out of the vocal folds. The consequence of what's happening here is that the cricothyroid muscles are contracting, and so they stretch out the vocal folds like this, and that's what has it go up in pitch. Conversely, when the cricothyroid muscle kind of loosens up a little bit and the thyroid cartilage goes back a little bit, we get a loosening of the muscles, and so we get this and this. Vocal folds are going to be stiff, right? And there's air leaking through, so when they're lax and they're not stretched out as much, there's more of an opening, hence more air leakage. You're kind of compromising a little bit on the quality of the whistle because, and not like the quality, but like what it sounds like in order to get this effect, in order to be able to get vibrato on it. It's really, really kind of cool. And just it shows the additional control and mastery. And so that's how she's getting this pianissimo with a vibrato. She's using air here and a brighter vowel to get more volume. More frequency doesn't just equal more sound, but we're also extremely sensitive in our hearing. ear is tuned to a very specific set of frequencies. It's not just how we hear, it's how loud we hear it. This graph is measured in decibels, and decibels are exponential, meaning that this isn't a switch or just a dialing of a knob. This is several knobs cranked up to high. But what does this have to do with high notes? If we look back at that graph, we can see that there is a very specific frequency where the escalation of volume of these decibels starts, and it is from B natural to C. That was a little clip I made a while ago to show that the way that the human ear is tuned takes into account, like it's like how we, it's not just the volume, it's our perception of volume, and it's consistent throughout. It's the difference between an echo and a reverberation is actually like 50 milliseconds on the dot. The human brain is bizarre. The way our ears are tuned is just a matter of acoustics. The size of our ear canal hits the resonant frequency of right around 3000 hertz. So in order to get louder, all she has to do is bias her vocal tract to highlight frequencies that are sympathetic or highlight her vocal tract in such a way that gets to about 3000 hertz or things that are subdivisions of 3000 hertz, so that the rest of it is like, there's layers to this. you can have overtone bias in your own throat. Opera singers train this for years to get volume. There's a big difference between like right? I'm just changing the shape of my throat there to get different frequencies. And look how bright this frequency ends up becoming. I'm controlling that. I've spent over a decade, I can't say decades yet, almost. I'm getting old. I don't want to talk about it. It's been a long time working on that. And that's what she's doing up there to get more volume. I love that she doesn't use a lot of like super precise pitch correction in some of her recordings. Some of these are like a little off by like cents, which is like a hundredths of a pitch. The reason why she does it is because whenever she does like layers and overdubs, you don't get like the maximum sonorousness when everything's mathematically like perfectly even. This is why there are different tunings. There's just tuning, there's mean tuning, there's Pythagorean tuning. And when you want to get like the real sweet stuff, the real juicy harmonies, Pythagorean is a matter of ratios, not like cents and like really neat subdivisions of hertz. So in her recording, some things are going to be flat and some things are going to be sharp. That's human. We're not robots yet. But the stopping and starting of the breath is immaculate. We talk a lot about exhalation. When we talk about exhalation, we talk a lot about the diaphragm. We talk about the diaphragm and breathing in general. It's a little bit of a misnomer. It's not that it's not responsible for breathing. It's that it's so important your body doesn't leave it up to you. Like, you don't have any nerve endings on the diaphragm. You know, people say diaphragmatic breathing. If your diaphragm ain't working, you're dead. You're dead. You're just gone. It's over for you. So you're always using your diaphragm. But there are muscles that have a little bit more nuanced control because the lungs are a bit like a plastic bag. No structure of their own. They're just tied entirely to the torso. It's done through a mucosal lining. If I contract any part of my torso, I'm actually pushing against the lungs in a way that will expel air. A lot of people will use like distant, smaller muscle groups farther away from their chest cavity, like the muscle right below your rectus abdominis. But here we have the obliques, and yeah, here we have the rectus, which is your six-pack. Interesting that this is so popular because it's actually one of the more superficial muscles of the abdominal wall. Like, it's not that strong. Your transverse, this thing is strong. But you can use the pyramidal, this thing. So this being so far removed from the rib cage and from the lungs, but its contraction still affects everything else. So you can get more nuanced control and get little tiny puffs of air by contracting this muscle. this is where I want to insert, like, Mariah's not thinking about this consciously. This is kind of stuff that you want to practice and train so you don't think about it. Like, you can put your hand in that air of your body, and as you're exhaling and you want to do like those tiny puffs of air, but you train it so that you don't think about it, okay? You don't want to be like, oh, I'm gonna put the square peg in the round hole and carry the 2 and the 3. This is ultimately a craft, it's an art. You don't want to do that when you're singing. Just that's so impressive as Mariah that she does these things so intuitively and doesn't think about them. It's kind of wild. Human beings are extraordinary. It's really important to note she's morphing her vowels to give emphasis on certain notes that make the legato and the runs sound better. Right? Certain ones are getting emphasis, right? Okay, this is where I gotta disagree with this one. Okay, a piccolo does not sound this nice. Piccolos are not like nice sounding, okay? That's just not true. Sorry to you piccolo players, but you know I'm right. Piccolos are so high, they tend to be a little bit of abrasive. They're just a little abrasive. So I would not call that sound a piccolo, but that's me. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's just, oh my god, that's ridiculous. Oh my god, there's so much control too. It's just about ergonomics and comfort and just like, it's in the details. And this is why I think one of the real tests of like technique is put someone in front, like in a situation where they have to just sing for a really long time, usually at a pretty higher volume. You'll find out real quick how ergonomic, how efficient their technique is. This is why like opera singers will do maybe well in competitions or do well when they're coming up, but then they'll start to have a career and they fall off like almost immediately because they can't sing for 4 hours over an orchestra. And this happens on tour. It's efficiency at that point. It's like everything we talked about done just so finely and so refined. There's only the tension that needs to be there, and everything else is just incredibly efficient. It's masterfully done.